All right. Well, I'm going to get started here. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Mitch Cook. I'm a retirement plan advisor here with Excel Wealth Management, and we're happy to share with you our next webinar in the Financial Roadmap series. Protect the ones you love, having the right insurance for the future. Today, I have Drew Gray with me. He's one of our individual solutions advisors at Excel. He's got quite a bit of experience on the personal insurance lines and home, auto, life, umbrella insurance. And he's really going to highlight some of the key trends we're seeing in this area, hit on some of the best practices, but then also talking about some of the challenges that many of us are facing, really, when it comes down to this side of the world. But before we get started and get into the presentation, I do want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is a recorded webinar. So any questions that you have, definitely use the Q&A to ask your questions, and then we'll answer those questions here at the end. As always, our wonderful disclosures. This is an educational program. So any information that we share, it is not going to be necessarily direct advice for you, but at least making sure that you understand that this is an educational webinar. So today's agenda, I really think it's focused on the gift for financial peace and security. That's kind of the biggest focus here. We kind of spend our lives showing our families how much we love and appreciate them, but sometimes we go along the way and there's areas that we may not realize the potential impact that it may have, not only on our family, ourselves, just if something was to happen. And so today is really going to be providing some of that guidance and oversight in areas that are important to check in when certain life events happen. Life insurance, home, auto, umbrella. And so when many of us or will have or are currently experiencing some of these life events, whether it's getting married, having kids, changing jobs, buying a house, I mean, along the way, we forget that maybe we need to do a check-in to make sure that we're protecting not only ourselves today, but for that future, for that, again, that financial peace of mind. So life insurance, I mean, it is truly about protecting the living and those you love. I mean, at some point in your life, you may need to purchase additional life insurance. And this could be very important, especially when you start carrying more debt and if your income is necessary for your household. This is where that added life insurance is going to be a key contributor for you. Now, some employers, they do provide a certain dollar amount for employees on coverage, which is great. But once you leave that employer, typically that insurance doesn't come with you. So just making sure that you understand how that life insurance works. So what are the primary reasons people will buy insurance? Well, pay those final expenses, funeral, whatever that may be, whatever those additional costs are. Provide that income for their loved ones. Again, if you're part of a household where you carry a good portion of the income for the house, that's going to be important if something happens to you on an untimely death. How do you carry that moving forward? And of course, paying off a mortgage or other debt. The worst thing we would see happen is if something happened to you, and because of that, your family wasn't able to continue to live in the house that they're at. And so these are some of the reasons why life insurance is important and why we're starting with that and establishing a good financial strategy. All right, we have our first trivia question. What percentage of millennials overestimate the cost of life insurance? Is it 24%, 44%, or 64%? Well, I'm going to wait a little bit here, but I think many of us truly believe it's higher than what it is. It's 44%. Almost half of millennials think that life insurance costs too much money. And that there could be some truth behind that. It all depends on what kind of life insurance you're looking at. But in many cases, it really comes down to making sure that you understand what kind of life insurance that you need. So when we do look at life insurance, it comes in many shapes and sizes. And so it really comes down to that need factor, your age and what you're looking to budget. There are definitely a lot of life insurance products that you can buy. Majority of them are broken down into two categories. We have term life insurance and permanent life insurance. With term life insurance, it's there in the event that you have an unexpected event, death, and you need to have a good amount of coverage to help with that unexpected event. A lot of people, this is probably one of the biggest things that you could actually buy at the lowest cost. So term life insurance tends to be a lower cost structure. But if you end up riding out the term and the term's done, you're not going to have any money to come back. That's why the premium's typically lower. You're buying for the death benefit, nothing else. Permanent insurance, it's there for you as long as you live and allows you to leave a legacy when you're gone. So you're actually building up cash value inside of a permanent life insurance policy. You're getting something in return. And in many cases, a permanent life insurance policy can be used more so down the road to help with any kind of legacy planning, potential retirement income planning. There's a lot of other benefits that permanent life insurance has, but there is a higher cost associated with that. In many cases, in a permanent life insurance policy, you can access that money while you're still alive once you hit kind of that above 65 age. And you can typically take that cash value out and any growth tax-free. So there is a benefit with permanent life. But term life is going to be a bigger area for you to look at if you need to cover those immediate needs if something happened to you. All right, it might sound a little funny, but there are many life insurance benefits you and your family can enjoy while you're living. And that's where, like I said, that's where that permanent life insurance policy comes in. That's where you can leave that legacy to a charity or family, provide cash to settle your estate, depending on how big of a estate that you have, diversify that retirement savings, protect the value of your business. If you own a business or are a partner in a business, this could be one of those areas that can help protect that value and the ongoing support for that business. And then, of course, provide an emergency fund in the event of a chronic or terminal illness. Typically, you can sell your policy to access those proceeds if that's something that happened to you, if you ended up with cancer or terminal illness where you do need to have that money now. So those are some things to definitely take a look at while you're still living. So what is the potential cost of a term life insurance? I'm giving you a couple live examples here. These are individuals that are in their 30s, whether it's a male or female, and they bought a 20-year term policy. Remember, this is a policy where you're focused on the death benefit and the lower the amount of premium. So for someone who's that age at a 20-year term, for a male, it costs $280 a year for a $500,000 policy. That's pretty amazing from the cost and trade-off. A female is a little bit lower. Apparently, they take on less risk than males, so they get a little bit better of a cost structure. Theirs would be about $221. Now, one of the things that I do get asked is, well, how much coverage do I need to have if I need for a death benefit inside of a life insurance policy? A good rule of thumb is about 8 to 10 times what your annual salary is. So if you're making $50,000 a year, a $500,000 life insurance policy tends to be really the amount for coverage. And keep in mind, the reason for that is you tend to have debt that you want to make sure that's paid off, but you also want to support any of the lost income that you're not going to be bringing in as a household. So about 8 to 10 times is what we typically recommend to definitely take a look at initially, but going through a more cost analysis is beneficial. Again, most businesses do offer group term life insurance. Just check with your benefit package to see if you may have that group life and whether you can buy more insurance. Now, it is based on health. So if there is any kind of health concerns that you may have, or let's say you did end up having cancer and now you're in remission, life insurance companies may not cover you as an outside policy, but a business policy, if you can buy up in it, they may not require you to share that information to buy into it. So that could be one of the reasons to definitely check out at a business level. Okay, before we hand it off to Drew, we got another trivia question. What is the average cost of a new roof in the state of Iowa? Is it A, 30,000, B, 10,000, or C, 20,000? And I guess there's no ABC here, but I think everybody knows what I'm asking. Well, it looks like everyone that joined us here, it is $10,000. Now, this is definitely changing a lot more, and I know Drew's going to share more on this. Wind and hail damage over the last 5 years have definitely adjusted this with insurance companies. So as I said, Drew's going to go through some of these trends, the challenges, best practices that we need to be looking at.
Yeah, thanks for handing it over. And yeah, that the cost of a roof here in Iowa, it's probably more like $15,000 to replace that. And what we're seeing right now here in Iowa is a lot of these carriers are requiring now what's called a windstorm hail deductible. More times than not, you're using that deductible if you have to replace your roof. So if most of these carriers right now are charging, let's say it's a 2% windstorm hail deductible, you're paying, and you're living in a $500,000 home. That's what your dwelling coverage A is, the cost to rebuild it. That's where you're getting that 2%. You're taking 2% of that dwelling coverage, and that comes out to right around $10,000. So if that's what your deductible is, then you're basically covering the cost to repair your roof. So that's something that you guys can kind of keep an eye on with your own policies. And as you're, maybe shopping around in the market, just keep an eye on that windstorm hail deductible. You don't want to be in a situation where, you're the one that's covering that out of pocket, especially when that's, a very common claim here in Iowa. So I kind of wanted to get into some of the market trends here in Iowa for home, auto, and umbrella insurance. As a lot of us are seeing right now, there's a lot more storms that are happening here in Iowa. We're getting more flooding. That means there's been more insurance claims. That's one of the reasons why a lot of our premiums are going up, is because there's just been more claims. The insurance companies got to continue to raise rates to keep up with the rising claim costs that are going on right now. There's a big impact with construction costs as well. There's inflation, labor shortages, supply chain disruptions, all these things, they have a significant impact on the home repair costs. So if it costs more to rebuild your home because it costs more for labor, it costs more for the supplies, then your coverage A, your dwelling limit goes up. If your coverage A dwelling limit goes up, your premium is going to go up with that as well. So that's one reason why your rates are going up. Obviously the rising claims too. And then a lot of carriers are scaling back right now as well. They're making it tougher with underwriting. They're requiring higher deductibles. These insurers got to stay financially stable in order to continue to pay out your guys' claims. So they're making a lot of different changes, whether it's tightening eligibility, increasing your deductibles, or sometimes just discontinuing the policies as a whole and non-renewing you. And it's making it a much more harder to find affordable coverage right now as well. We've seen a lot of carriers exit the market within the last few years. Secura was one of those. They exited personal lines in October of 23, and then we've seen other carriers follow suit. Some big names are IMT, Selena, Pekin. They've all exited within the last few years. So tough for the carriers to be profitable here in this state. So we're seeing a lot of those carriers leave, which now reduces the amount of options we have for carriers. And then just some challenges you guys are all facing. Obviously, the increase in premiums and reduced coverage availability since carriers are leaving. What you guys can do is review your policies right now. Reach out to your current agent or start shopping it around, compare rates, explore the different discounts that are out there. All these carriers are coming out with new discounts. So knowing what those discounts are and seeing if those are available for you. Going on to the next slide here. Um, so, what's, mainly driving these premium rate hikes? It's the rising repair costs and the accident severity. That's what's really driving it right now. Um, Insurers have really three ways right now have raised rates to offset this three ways. It's higher claim payouts from severe weather. Number two would be inflation. That's increasing your repair costs. And then three, the rising litigation expenses, aka more people right now are suing more than ever. These rate hikes help the insurance companies, be financially stable. And then a lot of these companies now are coming out with these telematics and usage-based insurance. Some of you might have heard about this. Progressive is one of the big companies doing that with like Snapshot with Progressive. Basically, it's monitoring your driving using either in-vehicle um, or having a mobile app by doing it. Basically, they're monitoring your speed, braking, mileage, that kind of stuff, and rewarding safe drivers. Might not be something for somebody if you're out there, you're a speeder, you like to brake quick, you're riding people. Maybe not something for you, but for you, smart drivers out there, we are, rewarding that. So there are discount options out there. So ask your current agent that, or if you're shopping around, ask them if they have those options. A lot of these companies will save you like 15% up front. You can save even more than that on your auto. And then smart shopping for those better rates, obviously, is just shopping around. And then some key auto insurance considerations here in Iowa. Just being aware that parties right now are filing. You're seeing more parties filing. There's more like lawsuits now than ever. So making sure that you have proper coverage. Many drivers don't realize that injury claims can be filed against them and the insurance may not fully cover those costs. So making sure that you have enough coverage there. Here in Iowa, our state minimums are $20,000 per person, $40,000 per accident, which probably wouldn't cover those major medical expenses. So if you were to have a child and they're in a car with a bunch of their friends and they're driving and they get into an accident and those the friends in that vehicle get injured, there's going to be medical expenses associated with that. You want to make sure that your policy has enough coverage there so that covers that, so you don't have to pay those costs out of pocket. Obviously, a lot of teenage drivers, they're high risk. They're going to charge more for those types of drivers. So looking into exploring like the different discounts that might be available to them, like your student discounts, discussing with them safe driving and maybe adding on one of those telematics programs. Those are different ways you can keep the costs down for your teenage drivers. And right now, so auto insurance premiums, they're continuing to rise right now. Since 2013, it's gone up almost 50%, and it's only continuing to rise from there. So I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So just being aware of those different discounts, talking deductibles with your agent, figuring out ways to try and get that premium down for you, but to make sure that you still have the right amount of coverage in place. And then moving on to this next slide here. Just kind of wanted to talk about the legal framework of stuff and how that works here in Iowa. It's what's called Chapter 515 of the Iowa Code. They ensure that insurers remain financially stable and they're capable of continuing to pay out those claims. That protects us consumers to make sure that, if we are with a carrier, they're making sure these carriers are financially stable so they can pay out those claims if that does happen. So you don't run into that situation where you have a claim and your carrier can't pay it out because they're financially insolvent. So there's regulation out there to make sure that you guys are protected. The Iowa Insurance Division regulates the pricing and all of that. Policyholder rights and dispute resolution, you can file complaints with the Iowa Insurance Division if you're experiencing an unfair claim. So I wanted you guys to know that's out there for you. And then just staying informed on the different trends that are happening right right now, the different legislative trends, and preparing for these market shifts that are coming. Some challenges for you guys right now as policyholders, it's that rising insurance costs. It's going up right now. It's only going to continue to go up. The limit in the amount of options that we have with the carriers exiting, we don't have as many options. So it's making it harder, or you have to pay more to secure that adequate protection that you need. A lot of these carriers are going to higher deductibles. They're requiring that insurers pay a certain amount of deductible, whether it be on the windstorm hail side or just on the all peril side. They are requiring certain deductibles. So knowing what that deductible is set at, you want to know what your current policy is set at. And if you go into your renewal, make sure that you know what your deductible is, because it could change at your renewal. So really just, reviewing your policy with your agent and making sure you know what's out available for you.
All right. We got one more trivia question. What is the primary purpose of umbrella insurance policy, other than covering your head on a rainy day? Is it to cover damage to your personal property, to provide additional liability coverage beyond your existing policy, to replace your auto or home insurance, to pay for routine maintenance costs? So what does everybody think? Well, I think a lot of individuals, they identify to provide additional liability coverage beyond your existing. You are correct. That is part of the umbrella expense. And I know that Drew's going to hit on more things than what individuals feel that an umbrella really applies to, because it is an area that I think doesn't get discussed as much as it should. So it's up to you.
Yeah.
On you, Drew.
Yeah. So good job on you guys for knowing that. But so yeah, and I just wanted to kind of go through some of the key insights for umbrella. So you guys understand what it is. It provides that additional coverage beyond what your limits on your home and auto insurance have. So, that example I gave, if you have your child, they're in a vehicle, they get into an auto accident, they have their friends in the car. If your current policy doesn't cover all the medical bills that results from the injuries that happen in that car crash, then you would have to pay those out of pocket if you didn't have an umbrella policy. But if you did have an umbrella policy, that would kick in at that time to provide that additional coverage that you would need, so you don't have to pay those additional costs out of pocket. And then rising premiums due to litigation and large settlements. Increased lawsuits and high court order settlements have driven up the liability risks. Insurers are adjusting premiums to cover growing legal costs and expensive claims, particularly due to the auto accidents and then personal injury cases. Now, for your home insurance, if you were to have somebody get injured on your property, your liability coverage doesn't have enough there. You only have 300,000. The injuries result in 500,000. You'd have to cover that $200,000 out of your pocket. If you had that umbrella, it comes in to cover that. That's one way it would work for the home insurance. And then with the liability costs on the rise, you should assess your coverage limits to ensure that you got that adequate protection. Just reaching out to an agent, making sure that if you need an umbrella, that you have it, and discussing, what the umbrella covers with them to determine if it's something that you should have or not. A lot of people don't know how much umbrella coverage they should need. So you should, have enough to protect your assets. Your coverage should match the total value of your assets to safeguard against your major financial liabilities. If you have a ton of assets out there, the more assets that you have, that's a greater need for a higher coverage limit. So, if you have assets that exceed, let's say, your current assets are, let's say it's over $1 million. You have assets that are like 2 million. You might want to consider bumping up your umbrella coverage. So having that conversation with your agent is important to make sure that you do have that adequate coverage there in case you were to need it. Like I said before, people are more sue happy than ever. So, you don't want to get into a situation to where you get sued and because of resulting from some injuries from an auto accident or from something that resulted from an accident that happened at your home, and then you have to pay those out of cost. That umbrella coverage would kick in, because if you get sued, they can sue you for pretty much everything you have unless it's protected. So if it's not, then they can come after all of that, and that umbrella would provide that protection there. That's to safeguard against that.
I was going to mention, Drew,
Yeah.
one area that we've definitely seen an uptick that most people may think about is influencers, people that do,
Mm,
whether it's online videos and they get a lot of their income from what they do online. And they may have some competitors that could provide negative reviews where it could impact their income. I believe umbrella is one of those areas that can help protect that future income due to lawsuits and litigations. I just look over the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of uptick that's occurred in the market in that space that a lot of these individuals may not realize this type of coverage could be beneficial for them to have.
yeah, that's good. That's a good add-in.
So
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to do some key takeaways here. Um, what you guys really need to focus on, like I said, is keeping an eye on your deductible right now because those are changing. These carriers are making requirements for deductibles, so knowing what your deductible is important. Um, a lot of people right now are shopping around just for rate, which I understand, but along with that rate, you want to make sure that you have the proper amount of coverages in place and that you're not having a super high deductible that you would have to pay out of pocket because that's what's happening right now is a lot of these carriers are able to price low, but your roof might be covered differently because the carriers are covering roofs a lot differently than they have in the past. And a lot of you might not know that it used to be everybody was covered at like replacement cost for their roof. So if you had damage to your roof, they'd come in and fully replace that for you. All you'd have to do is pay your deductible out of pocket. Well, now they're going to a scheduled for your roof to where maybe they're only going to pay 50% of your roof, and then you're the one that has to pay that extra 50% of the roof out of pocket. Or they're um, going to actual cash value. So at the time of the roof, when the damage occurred, they're only going to pay for what the value of that roof was at the time of that damage, and then you would have to pay the rest of that out of pocket. So understanding how your roof is covered is really important right now, and understanding the type of coverage that you have, because you would hate to get to a certain circumstance to where you were shopping and you bought a policy just because it was the cheapest premium, and then you have a claim on your roof and you end up having to pay almost the whole roof out of your own pocket. So keeping an eye on that kind of stuff. It's a great time to shop right now, to see what other options are out there. But it's also a great time to kind of stick where you're at too, because with all these carriers, um, bumping their deductibles and making that a requirement. A lot of us are getting grandfathered in at our deductibles, so you can keep your $1,000 deductible and not have to do that windstorm hail. So there's just a lot going on right now. Having these conversations with your agent is really important so you guys understand the coverages that you have, the deductibles that you have, and mainly how your roof is covered right now, because that's a big shift in our market that we're seeing.
lots of information. Uh, I definitely appreciate you sharing, those trends, challenges, and really a big part is being proactive. I think, as we kind of really sum everything up, what are some of those action items that we really need to be taking a look at? Well, as always, life events are a good checkpoint. Not everybody is really proactive with potential financial impacts and making sure we have the right protections in place. I mean, whether it's an untimely death or, we're starting to see some trends, whether it's in the current marketplace or even within the house. If all of a sudden you have a teenage driver, how's that going to impact? And making sure those coverages are there. And, I think as Drew, really shared, it's making sure we're balancing everything out amongst what you have available, whether it's home and auto and umbrella. And how can all of those work effectively for you? Because it's not just the deductibles going up, it's also the caps that are being put on these policies and the exposure that you just all of a sudden unintentionally have. So making sure that those coverages are in place and looking at some of those big coverages that could be available, whether it's a term life insurance policy to an umbrella, and making sure it makes sense for you as a household. I'm just going to share with you our next roadmap series is this next month on March 19th. It's income tax planning. Plan for today, save for tomorrow. This presentation is really going to go through the importance of diversifying your assets as you do accumulate those assets, and what could those potential tax implications be based on your projected income. And so it's really highlighting and going through that conversation for you. If you did miss any of our webinar series, as Drew was mentioning, deductibles are going up. Well, what if you don't have cash? Could budgeting and establishing an emergency fund be one of those things that you may want to talk about? We got a really good video series that goes through some of those items for you and really hits into those areas where it could lessen that financial stress and anxiety if those are some of the changes that you need to have. We'll open up to any questions. As mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, use that Q&A box for any questions that you may have.
All right, we got a couple questions in the queue. The first one is how to evaluate and find a good agent or app website to compare insurance policies across all providers for the deductions and fine details, and not just from the influencer's marketing post.
That's a great question. And I may actually hand this over to Drew. One of the things, just so that everybody knows, after you get done with the presentation here, there will be a survey that would allow you to have one of our complimentary reviews if you want to have a further discussion on your home, auto, life, umbrella, and just make sure that you're being educated on that. But Drew, I don't know if you want to add some commentary around that.
Yeah, you could reach out to me, like Mitch said. We work for a brokerage agency, so what that means is we're able to work with different insurance carriers here in Iowa. We're able to, and then we're able to compare rates for you. And you can do that on your own online with a lot of different things out there, but doing it with an agent is going to be a lot more beneficial to you because like you said, looking at the deductibles and the finer details of the policy, that's what I'd be able to do with you over the phone.
All right.
Google has a million different results that can go in a million different directions. And so being an independent agency, it allows us to hone in on what's the right fit for you as an individual.
All right. Thank you. Next question. How do you assess the risk of bankruptcy from the carrier?
That's a great question. I mean, one of the key things is taking a look at your financials as part of the overall planning process. So for us, when we take a look at the overall household situation, it's trying to figure out your overall debt to income and asset ratio, and taking a look at those particular items. That's part of the process that we can help you with. But when it comes down to bankruptcy with a carrier, that is an uncertainty. I don't know if Drew, if you have any insight around that, but that's where the protections that Iowa has in place with some of these insurance carriers takes into effect as well.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about that. There's different divisions here in Iowa that regulate all of that here in the state. But one way to kind of know that on your own end is just seeing the carriers that have been around for a long time. Those names that those are those long-standing, financially sound carriers out there that you want to be with. And then you can look at also the grade that each of these carriers have, which gives you an insight on their financial stability as well. it'll show as like an A plus, an A, and it'll give you a different grade, and you want to be within that A plus A range for a carrier, to make sure that they're financially stable. You want to be with a financially stable carrier for sure, especially in times like these.
Perfect. Thank you, Drew. And last question we have, how did we get email notifications about these webinars?
That's a pretty easy question. So after the webinars over here, that survey will allow you to check a box that can sign up for future webinars and seminars. So what we can make sure, and since you also asked the question personally, we can make sure that you get signed up as well. But again, the survey, once we're done here, will give you that opportunity to also sign up for future seminars.
All right. That is the last question that I have.
All right. Well, if you do have any further questions, I do have our contact information up here as well. You can definitely feel free to jot that down. Otherwise, as I mentioned, after the presentation's done here, it'll prompt up to have you go through that survey. If there are areas that you would like to have further conversation on, whether it's home and auto, umbrella, life insurance, or just in general from overall financial planning, budgeting, those are things that we can definitely schedule time to meet with you on. All those services that we would provide is complimentary for you. Again, I do appreciate everybody's time over the lunch hour, and I hope everybody has a great day.